A cold wind swept through the city streets as Daniel pulled his tattered coat tighter around his frail body. The biting chill of the evening air reminded him that another long, sleepless night awaited. He had been homeless for nearly 2 years, ever since a series of unfortunate events took everything from him: his job, his apartment, and eventually his sense of hope. Each day, he wandered the bustling streets, searching for discarded food and a warm place to rest. Despite his hardships, Daniel refused to let his circumstances define him. He avoided trouble, never begged aggressively, and always held on to the belief that life had something better in store for him, even if he couldn't yet see it. One evening, as he walked through a nearly empty park, he spotted something lying near a bench. Under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, he saw a black leather wallet. It looked expensive, its fine stitching and polished surface a stark contrast to his own rough, calloused hands. His stomach twisted with hunger, and an old familiar thought crept into his mind. What if there's money inside? His fingers trembled as he picked it up. He hesitated before flipping it open, half expecting it to be empty. But inside, he found a thick wad of crisp $100 bills. His breath hitched. He hadn't held this much money in years. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. This could change everything. He could buy food, a warm coat, maybe even a few nights at a cheap motel. The temptation gnawed at him, an internal battle raging between survival and morality. Then he saw the ID card. A name, Michael Carter. The face of a well-dressed man in his 40s stared back at him from the plastic sleeve. There was also a business card tucked inside. Carter and Associates Investment Firm. Daniel exhaled sharply. This wasn't just anyone's wallet. This belonged to a man who clearly had wealth and success. Would he even care if he lost a few $100s? But deep down, Daniel already knew what he had to do. Taking something that wasn't his, no matter how desperate he was, went against everything he believed in. He had nothing, but he still had integrity. Determined, he decided to return the wallet. But how? He had no phone, no way to contact Michael Carter. He would have to go to the address listed on the business card, a towering office building across the city. With one last glance at the money, Daniel clenched his jaw and made his decision. Daniel set off toward the address on the business card, his heart pounding with each step. The city was alive with activity. Couples strolling, businessmen hurrying, cars honking, but none of them noticed the homeless man walking among them, gripping a wallet that didn't belong to him. The hunger gnawed at his stomach. He passed a food cart, the smell of grilled meat making his mouth water. With the money in his pocket, he could buy a meal, something hot and filling. No, he told himself firmly. This money isn't mine. The streets grew quieter as he approached the upscale business district. Glass skyscrapers loomed over him, their reflections shimmering in the city lights. He found the building, Carter and Associates Investment Firm, but as he reached the entrance, his steps faltered. The revolving glass doors gleamed under the bright lights, and the lobby inside looked like something out of a magazine. People in tailored suits walked with purpose, their polished shoes clicking against the marble floors. Daniel hesitated, suddenly aware of his appearance. His clothes were stained, his shoes worn down to almost nothing. Would they even let him inside? Swallowing his pride, he stepped forward, but before he could enter, a security guard blocked his path. "Hey, you can't be here," the guard said, eyeing Daniel's ragged clothing. I just need to return this," Daniel said, holding up the wallet. "It belongs to someone in this building." "Michael Carter." The guard scoffed. "Yeah, sure. And I suppose you just found it?" "Yes," Daniel said, his voice firm. "I did." The guard narrowed his eyes, then sighed. "Wait here." Daniel stood awkwardly in the cold as the guard disappeared inside. Minutes passed. People glanced at him with pity, some with suspicion. He kept his gaze on the ground, gripping the wallet tighter. Finally, the guard returned. "Follow me," he said begrudgingly. Daniel stepped inside, feeling the warmth of the heated lobby against his frozen skin. He could feel the stares, businessmen and women looking at him as if he didn't belong. A few moments later, an elevator door opened, and a tall man in a navy suit stepped out. "Michael Carter." His sharp eyes scanned the room until they landed on Daniel. "You found my wallet?" he asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Daniel nodded and extended it. "Yes, sir. I found it in the park. Everything is inside." Michael took the wallet, quickly flipping through it. The cash was still there, his credit cards untouched. His expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable. "You had all this money in your hands," Michael said slowly, "and you didn't take a single dollar?" Daniel shook his head. "It's not mine." A long pause followed. Then Michael smiled, a small, genuine smile. "Come with me." Daniel hesitated. "Sir, I don't want anything. I just wanted to give it back." Michael's smile grew. "I know, but I insist." With that, he motioned for Daniel to follow him upstairs. Daniel followed Michael Carter into the elevator, feeling out of place in a luxurious setting. The walls were lined with polished wood, the soft chime of the elevator music playing in the background. As they ascended, Daniel kept his hands in his pockets, acutely aware of his ragged clothing compared to Michael's crisp suit. When the doors opened, Daniel was greeted by an office unlike anything he had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking view of the city skyline, while sleek black furniture and minimalist decor gave the space an air of quiet sophistication. Employees glanced up from their desks, murmuring among themselves as they took in the sight of the homeless man standing beside their CEO. Michael led him to a private office and gestured for him to sit. Daniel hesitated before lowering himself onto a leather chair, afraid that he might dirty it. "You didn't take the money," Michael said, settling into his seat. "Why?" Daniel looked down at his hands. "Because it wasn't mine. I know what it's like to have nothing, and I wouldn't want to take from someone else." Michael studied him for a moment. "What's your story, Daniel?" Daniel hesitated. He hadn't spoken about his past in a long time, but there was something about Michael's steady gaze that made him feel safe enough to share. "I used to have a life," he began. "A job, a home, a family. But things fell apart. My wife passed away, and after that, I lost everything. I tried to keep going, but grief swallowed me whole. I couldn't work, I stopped paying my bills, and before I knew it, I was out on the streets." Michael leaned forward, his eyes filled with an emotion Daniel couldn't quite place. "How long have you been homeless?" Daniel exhaled slowly. 3 years. A long silence filled the office. Michael tapped his fingers against his desk, deep in thought. "You could have stolen from me," he finally said, "but you chose honesty. That says a lot about your character." Daniel shook his head. "Honesty doesn't put food in my stomach, sir." Michael's lips curled into a small smile. "Maybe not, but it just might change your life." Before Daniel could ask what he meant, Michael picked up his phone and made a call. "Lisa, I need you to set up a meeting with HR. Tell them I have someone I'd like to interview for a position." Daniel's head snapped up. "Wait, what?" Michael hung up the phone. "You're looking for a fresh start, right? Well, I have an opening here. It's not glamorous, but it's a stable job, and it comes with a paycheck." Daniel stared at him, struggling to process what was happening. Why would you do this for me?" Michael leaned back in his chair. "Because I believe in rewarding honesty. And because once upon a time, someone gave me a second chance when I needed it most." A lump formed in Daniel's throat. I don't know what to say." Michael smiled. "Say yes." Tears burned in Daniel's eyes as he nodded. "Yes." Michael stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to Carter and Associates, Daniel." As Daniel shook his hand, he realized that his life had just changed forever. Daniel walked out of Michael Carter's office feeling as if he were in a dream. The idea of having a job, an actual job, seemed almost too good to be true. He had spent years surviving on the streets, struggling just to get through each day. Now, in a matter of hours, everything had changed. But as he sat in the waiting area outside the HR office, doubt crept into his mind. What if he failed? What if he wasn't good enough? He had been out of work for years. He didn't have any business experience. What if Michael regretted helping him? A woman with short, blonde hair and a professional demeanor walked toward him, holding a clipboard. "Daniel, right?" she said with a warm smile. "I'm Lisa, Mr. Carter's assistant. HR is ready to see you." Daniel swallowed his nerves and followed her into a sleek conference room. 2 representatives from the company's human resources department sat across from him. They looked at his worn-out clothes, but neither made a comment about his appearance. "We understand that you don't have recent work experience," one of them, a man named Mr. Reynolds, said. "But Mr. Carter believes in giving people a chance. So let's start with something simple. Do you have any skills or past experience in any kind of work?" Daniel hesitated. "I used to work in construction, and before that, I did janitorial work. I know how to fix things. I'm good with my hands." The HR team exchanged a glance. "We actually have an opening for a maintenance assistant in this building," Mr. Reynolds said. "It's an entry-level position, but it comes with benefits and a stable paycheck. Would that be something you're interested in?" Daniel nodded quickly. "Yes, absolutely." "Great," Lisa said. "We'll start you on a probationary period, and if everything goes well, we can make it a permanent role." A wave of relief washed over Daniel. He had a job, a real job. He could hardly believe it. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the office early, dressed in a set of clean clothes that Lisa had helped him get from a local shelter. He was introduced to the building's maintenance team, a group of hard-working men who welcomed him without judgment. His tasks were simple at first: fixing leaky faucets, changing light bulbs, assisting with office repairs. It wasn't glamorous work, but Daniel didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt useful again. But it wasn't easy. His body had grown weak from years of malnutrition, and he found himself struggling to keep up with the physical demands of the job. There were moments when he wanted to give up, when he felt like he didn't belong in this world anymore. One afternoon, after fixing a broken cabinet in one of the executive offices, Daniel ran into Michael Carter in the hallway. "How's the job treating you?" Michael asked. Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead. "It's harder than I expected," he admitted. Michael studied him for a moment. "I won't lie to you, Daniel. Change is hard, but you've already taken the hardest step, getting started. Now you just have to keep going." Daniel let those words sink in. Keep going. As weeks passed, Daniel slowly adjusted to his new life. He worked long hours, sometimes pushing himself to exhaustion. But with each passing day, he felt stronger. He started saving money. He found a small, affordable room in a shared housing facility. He even reconnected with an old friend from his past who had thought he was long gone. But not everyone at the company was welcoming. Some employees whispered behind his back, wondering why a homeless man had been given a job at a prestigious firm. One particularly arrogant executive, Mr. Calloway, made snide remarks whenever he saw Daniel. "Still getting used to indoor plumbing? Huh?" He sneered one day as Daniel fixed a sink. "Must be nice having the CEO hand you a golden ticket." Daniel clenched his fists, but he didn't respond. He had learned the hard way that some battles weren't worth fighting. Instead, he let his work speak for itself. Michael, seeing Daniel's dedication, made sure to let others know that Daniel had earned his place. And little by little, the whispers died down. One day, Lisa approached him with a smile. "Mr. Carter wants to see you in his office," she said. Daniel's stomach twisted with nerves. Had he done something wrong? But when he stepped inside, Michael was grinning. "You've done good work here, Daniel," he said. "I think it's time we talk about your future." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His future? He had never dared to dream about the future before. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to start. Daniel sat across from Michael Carter in the spacious office, his hands resting nervously on his lap. He had worked hard over the past few months, proving himself day after day, but he had never expected this, an actual meeting with the CEO. Michael leaned forward, his expression warm. "Daniel, when I first met you, you returned my wallet with no expectation of a reward. That single act told me everything I needed to know about your character. Since then, I've watched you work harder than anyone here, without complaint, without excuses. That's the kind of person I want on my team." Daniel's heart pounded. I don't know what to say." Michael smiled. "Say yes. I want to offer you a full-time position with benefits. You'll be officially promoted to lead maintenance technician with a salary increase." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Just months ago, he had been sleeping on cold sidewalks, scavenging for food, convinced that his life would never change. Now, he had a steady job, a place to stay, and an offer for an even better future. Yes," he said, his voice shaking. "Yes, of course." Michael stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Daniel." Daniel shook his hand, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. For the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving. He was living. As the weeks passed, Daniel settled into his new role, earning the respect of his coworkers. The whispers and doubts from others faded as people saw his dedication. The same employees who had once questioned his presence now greeted him with nods of approval. One evening, after finishing his shift, he walked past the front entrance of the building and noticed a man rummaging through a trash can. The sight was painfully familiar. Without hesitation, Daniel approached him. "Hey, are you hungry?" The man hesitated, looking embarrassed, but nodded. Daniel pulled out his wallet, the same wallet he had earned through his hard work, and handed the man enough money for a warm meal. "Things can change," Daniel said softly. "I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but they can." The man looked up, his eyes filled with both disbelief and hope. As Daniel walked away, he realized something important. His journey wasn't just about his own survival. It was about lifting others up, just as someone had once lifted him. Daniel's story became well known in the company, and eventually, the local news picked it up. Reporters wanted to talk to the homeless man who had returned a millionaire's wallet and ended up changing his own life in the process. When asked about his journey, Daniel always said the same thing. It all started with one choice: to do the right thing, even when no one was watching. That one choice set everything in motion. His story became an inspiration, proving that kindness, integrity, and perseverance could transform even the most hopeless situations. And perhaps, in the end, that was the real reward.